Hello, bonjour, everyone. Thanks for your interest in the Helping Others short series. My name is Marie-Paule. I am known to some as MP, and I'm the local wellness advisor for the varsity sports community. If you've not heard of local wellness advisors, wonder what they do, or if you have a good idea and would like to book an appointment with any one of us, or the one associated to your faculty or unit, I invite you to please visit mcgill.ca/LWA, and you will find all the information you need right on there. So the series, we are recognizing that this does not make up for being able to meet in person and have discussions with you around wellness and, in this case, helping others. But we do still want to provide you with some resources, and thank you for taking the time to listen to this, and hopefully it leads to the start of a discussion. As you can see, we are all probably, like most of you, I am in the sort of intimate setting of my own home, so I thank you for your patience and appreciating that this is not going to be a perfect recording by any means, because I don't have control over everything, including the noises on the street, but we will make the best of it. I have my coffee, so you can grab yours if you'd like, and let's get started. So I'm going to share my screen with you so that you can follow along with the presentation. Here we go. And I will say, see you on the other side of the presentation, and we'll remove my face and rosy cheeks here from the screen. Enjoy. So helping others in part 1, recognizing distress. Before we begin, I want to take a moment to acknowledge that McGill University, the city of Montreal, where I am currently located, as well as our lovely brown building here in the picture, are all located on the traditional unceded territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe nations. So I want you to pause, or I invite you to consider your rapport to the traditional Indigenous land that has so long been taken for granted. I want to recognize as well all Indigenous students, staff, and faculty from McGill, and I appreciate the opportunities I have to be learning and working alongside you. And finally, I want to show appreciation for the Indigenous worldview. It is one from which I've learned a lot over the years, and I recognize that we continue to borrow from it every day when we speak about wellness and a holistic approach to health, which we will be doing over the course of this session. So the series, as I mentioned today, we will be focusing on recognizing distress in others. The follow-up topics are all listed on here. When I invite you to take them all in on your own time, at your own pace, to give you a bit of a indication, today's introductory session should be the longest of the 4. And my goal is to keep you for no longer than 20 minutes. So let's get started, and know that the rest of the series will be facilitated by different and equally remarkable LWA colleagues today. So what I want to do as part of today's session is to begin by defining well-being. Then we'll move into, as we mentioned earlier, recognizing distress. That will include a list of red flags for you to consider. And then we'll spend a bit of time demystifying some language and concepts around mental health and mental illness. So defining well-being. It will come to no surprise to those upper year students when I say there is no real consensus on a single definition of well-being. For neo students, welcome to academia. So, as you see on screen, the terminology in the literature, you'll see wellness, well-being used interchangeably. You'll see different spellings for well-being. And just side note, I will probably use wellness and well-being interchangeably today. So I'm referring to the same thing when I do that. So multiple definitions exist, and one sort of critique that's been made of the definitions out there is that they, for the most part, refer to, what well-being or wellness is made up, and not describe actually what it is. So, as an example, think of your favorite food. Imagine you had never yet discovered it, and you have the name of it, but just a list of ingredients. No image, no texture, no understanding of how the ingredients interact with one another. So that was sort of the critique that I found in the literature. So in order to help me and hopefully help you, I wanted to find a definition that would give us a common understanding and, succinctly explain what well-being is so that we have a common understanding. And I think I've managed to do that. So I present you the seesaw analogy. So as you'll see on screen, a simple seesaw, maybe you had one on your elementary school playground when you were younger. And if you have never seen a seesaw before, it's the same concept as a scale that tips from side to side. So instead of sitting children on either side of the seesaw like we normally would, in this idea, we put on one end the resources that an individual, whether it be you or someone else, would have, and on the other end, the challenges. Now, resource will vary in nature. You see here psychological, social, physical. Same goes for challenges. When we say resources, what we mean is anything that can sort of help you. So, socially, for example, a resource could be a skill that you have. It could be, you make friends very easily, or it could be something that external to you. Not living alone, for example, you live with a supportive family or group of people. That would also be a resource. So the idea here is, in a state of optimal well-being, you could sit, or the person could sit at the very center of the seesaw comfortably without, leaning on either side. Now, I say optimal because the reality of well-being is that, sure, we aim to experience optimal well-being, but one thing that the literature or scholars tend to agree on is this idea that it's multidimensional and sort of dynamic. So the key takeaway here is, yes, we want to aim for well-being, but realistically, we know that we can't comfortably sit in the middle part of the seesaw always in balance. There is going to be some shifts based on life and transitions that we go through. If you're interested to read more about this, the article that I'm referring to is listed on screen. Remember, I mentioned what wellness is made up of as part of the critique of definitions. Well, here's the ingredient list, if you wish. In the case of wellness at McGill, this is the image that the university has adopted to demonstrate what wellness is made up of. And you may very well see this wellness wheel. It's one representation. There's many out there if you do a Google search. But you may very well see this one or a slight variety. On this one, if you book with a professional or go hang out in the healthy living annex or whatnot. So I'm showing it to you briefly today, asking you to keep in mind that for every aspect or every dimension of the wheel, your spiritual wellness, your mental wellness or mental health, your physical health, you are going to have, or a person is going to have, resources and challenges. Back to that seesaw analogy, right? And sometimes the resources in one area may be depleted, but you may have resources in another that you can lean on. So I won't spend too much time on the wellness wheel. The idea was just to present it to you today. And I believe that in part 4 of this series, it may pop up again as you learn about self-care. So recognizing distress in others. So basically the heart of why you probably are watching this today. So there's 3 questions that I want to throw out at you for you to think about. We don't expect you to walk away an expert on recognizing distress. Even those of us who work in the mental health field can sometimes miss things. So the idea is to engage you in a reflection and maybe even a conversation at some point. So what are signs of distress? What about crisis? How is it different than distress? Can we distinguish between the two? So in short, when we are thinking distress, again, back to this image of the scale, distress is when we don't have resources or significant amount of resources to deal with the challenges we're facing. So the scale's tipping, and that creates a state of distress. An example, let's say you're getting ready for your exam. It's that same morning, you have to get there on time, you have so much time to write it. So all of that can cause a bit of stress, which is absolutely normal. But maybe, there's this one time you're sitting down to write your exam and suddenly you don't feel like you're breathing very well, you're hyperventilating, or might be the person next to you as well. They're not able to focus. They're suddenly don't have the tools or the resources to be dealing with the situation that they're in and to carry out the task that is writing that exam. So that would be one example of distress. When we're talking about crisis, distress can definitely over time lead to crisis. When we're talking about crisis, it's more in the intensity of the difficulties that the person is experiencing. So when someone is experiencing crisis, their functioning usually is going to be impacted. And by functioning, what I mean is everything that we need to function well, like the basic stuff, sleeping, eating properly in proper amounts, taking care of ourselves physically, so hygiene, going grocery shopping, doing the things that we need to do to live as a balanced a lifestyle as possible. So when someone's in crisis, usually some of these things are impacted. So maybe they've experienced insomnia, or they're sleeping way more than they usually would. Maybe their appetite is completely gone, or they're overeating. So these are only signs, but just to give you an example to differentiate crisis from distress, when we're talking about crisis, there's a lot more instability and perhaps even becoming dangerous for the person's health and safety. So I said we would look at some red flags. So I'm going to let you sort of taken the points that are written down here. And again, these are some examples. The list is not exhaustive. You may very well think of more. If we were in person, I'm sure that we could, keep this list going. But I will bring your attention to a few, just so we can use as examples. So you see here, we have a point, disheveled, tired. So if you think about sitting in class and maybe, and it's going to be different this year, obviously, because we're going to be doing more remote learning. But imagine, sitting in class and there's this person in your class who normally is showing up with their appearance well cared for, their hair's put together, and then suddenly it's different. They're coming to class looking very tired. You can tell by their face. Maybe there's like dark circle under their eyes. Their clothes aren't really looking clean, or you get the picture. So when we talk about someone being disheveled and tired, it's easier to see, excuse me, in someone that you see regularly or a friend, because you see the change. Trouble coping. So earlier, what I described as an example of distress, the exam, that would be an example of trouble coping. So it happens. It happens to all of us. So we can experience distress and bounce back. We can also experience crisis and bounce back. However, in crisis, generally, we would encourage people to seek professional help. So on the other side of this list, you see suicidal ideation. When someone is actively talking about suicide, we definitely urge you to take them seriously, because usually when we're, hyper focused on suicide, we're getting more into the on the side of crisis, and we certainly would say stay with the person, call for help. There's all kinds of resources. We will go over some of these, but again, angry outbursts is another one that would happen to most people, but the key here is the shift. So if someone is usually very enjoyable to be around and you have fun together, and suddenly they're just almost barking at you and reacting very differently than they normally do, much more strongly, I guess, then that could be an indication. Moving on to some common mental health language, really just to pause here, because nowadays the word stress, anxiety, depression, we hear them a lot in common vocabulary, and it's important to differentiate normal stress from, example, distress or crisis, like we've already done. So stress is actually just a physiological, our body's responding to a threat or a stimulus in our environment. Sorry. We sometimes need it. If you're crossing the street and there's a car coming, you see it at the last minute, run. Okay, that is stress. That is stress making you react to sort of get out of the way. The problem is when stress is the switch is flicked on maybe too frequently, or in times when you're not really in danger. And then stress has sort of a cumulative effects on the body. So it's important to have times when we relax and we replenish and we sort of get rid of that accumulation of stress in the body. Anxiety, same. You'll hear people go around say, I'm feeling so anxious. There's a difference between feeling anxious about something and actually experiencing something like generalized anxiety disorder. Two different things. So anxiety, much like stress, your body will have a response, often fear-based. It could be about, worrying about the unknown. And a lot of us will can relate to that in times of COVID. But anxiety, if we want to sort of differentiate it a little bit from stress, has more to do with our internal read. So of something or someone or a situation or environment. So if we're responding with anxiety, it has to do with the feelings and the thoughts we have about something. And then stress and anxiety are both part of adaptation. So we sometimes need it to adapt and it overlaps. So both sort of normal mechanisms to an extent. But when anxiety is, again, like stress, repetitive, then more problematic. And when someone is diagnosed with an anxiety disorder, we're really talking about another level. And it's important to be able to sort of differentiate. Depression, you'll hear people say, I'm feeling so depressed. Same idea. We all have lows, times where we're feeling sad or days that aren't so good and other days that are better. But when someone is depressed, when we're talking about like a clinical depression, the sadness is withstands the test of time, I guess you could say. So it lasts longer. There's all kinds of other signs. We talked about functioning earlier. So usually we'll see signs and changes, like significant changes to normal sleep or normal eating patterns, loss of interest in your usual activities. There's, anxiety may be mixed in with that. So again, takeaway, there's a difference between, feeling depressed and actually experiencing a depression. And then following up with this image of a continuum. So on the vertical axis here, you see mental health, and on the horizontal, mental illness. And the reason I want to show this to you is simply to say, no matter who we are, no matter if we have a mental illness diagnosis or we don't, we are all able to experience good mental health just as much as we are all able to have the ability to experience poor mental health. And if I was to go around and change the words mental health everywhere here for wellness or our overall state of well-being, that includes mental health, same idea. So just because someone has a diagnosis, it doesn't mean that they can't experience good overall well-being. When the illness is managed and we've got good supports in place, we can live well. On the other end of the scale, we can be someone without the daily sort of diagnosis or challenges that can come with a mental health diagnosis and experience poor mental health because of whatever situations we find ourselves in, or we're not managing our stress well. So just keep this in mind. Everybody has the potential to find themselves in distress. Everybody has the potential to find themselves in crisis. Some of us may have more vulnerabilities to this because of a pre-existing condition. So before I leave you, a few resources I mentioned earlier, McGill.ca. If you visit McGill.ca/wellness hub, you will get access to all kinds of resources that are available through the Wellness Hub, including some self-help tips and links to other tools. And so I encourage you, because we will be spending more time in the comfort of our home, even if that's maybe not what we wish right now, do take the time to go look at the website. You just never know when this might come handy to help yourself or someone else, even a member of your family. This is all free, accessible to the public. Keep Me Safe is a newer resource, and it's available, accessible to all McGill students, no matter where you are on the globe right now. So please go to the SSMU website or download the Keep Me Safe app on your phone. We want to make sure that you have access to resources if and when you need them. So Keep Me Safe is available to everybody, but for students who are not on the Quebec, in the province of Quebec or in the Quebec territory right now, that would be sort of the go-to resource for you. For the students who are in Quebec, you may book appointments with professionals in the hub. So please don't hesitate to do so if that's the need, and see your list of programming. There's going to be some live events as well. So I thank you for spending this time, learning a little bit about recognizing distress, and I invite you to take in the rest of the series and enjoy for a moment this lovely image of beautiful Montreal as I come back on screen with you. And I will stop sharing the screen and invite you, if you're interested, to participate in one of our upcoming Q&A sessions. You can find all the information on the McGill website that I just gave you. Thanks for listening. Enjoy the rest of your day.